Fáilte. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree. I'm your host, Terrance Ó Domhnaill. Thank you for joining me again this week. After taking a week off to manage some pressing IT projects, of which I still have more to do after today, I'm back to talk about the new world of technology we find ourselves in now, and the near future that's going to bring to the United States and the West in general. So much is changing so quickly, and not all for the good of mankind. So gather around, sit you down somewhere comfortable for a bit. So I'll tell you about how China is likely to bring on a major recession in the United States with their rapid advances in cheaper AI models, the massive surveillance state that the US and other Western countries are creating, and how these new mega data centers may be the catalyst that brings it all down. The articles I'm referencing today are 2 weeks old by now, but still very relevant to the topic at hand, which is how technological advances are outstripping our ability to keep up with it all. I received this first article in my inbox from the Existential Republic by Chris Armitage. His article is an apology of sorts about him wearing a pair of meta glasses that allow people to record things without being too obvious about it. Or that's the selling point anyway. And I'll bring this up here so you can kind of, if you want to go look at it, you can go find the article. It's entitled, I Wore Meta Glasses, Then I Read the Record. What Chris found out the hard way was that the people he was interviewing weren't stupid and quickly discerned what he was wearing and called him out on it. As it turns out, these special glasses have a little record light on the front that tells people that they may be being recorded. Since Mr. Armitage neglected to tell his interviewees that he was recording them, they became understandably upset with him. Once he figured it out, he apologized in person and wrote this apology article for anyone else he might have accidentally upset, and went into detail about the glasses and the pitfalls of wearing them. I mean, think about this. What if the wrong sort of person took it very badly? They found out someone was recording them without being told. I've heard of people getting shot over less things. These glasses are a serious threat to people's privacy. What people don't realize is that everything these glasses record and other technologies like them gets sent to cloud servers mounted in all these huge data centers around the world, which is why these huge corporations want to build so many of them. I've said this many times before. People's private or public data, whether from social media or raw data from something as innocuous as these glasses or a mobile device, has to go from the device to a cloud server somewhere. Once it's on those servers, it's a forever thing. Whatever they record becomes ones and zeros on a hard drive somewhere forever until someone physically deletes it from the servers. So let me, as I mentioned on the last show I uploaded a couple of weeks ago, I'm a semi-retired IT guy. I'm a certified IT network engineer, systems administrator, and computer technician. I just spent the last week and a half doing security upgrades to my own servers and my own little cloud server, and I still have more to do. All of my security defenses came due this month with a deadline of July 31st. Right now, I'm taking a little break in between those projects to bring you this podcast while I'm still waiting on a computer part from Amazon to arrive. In other futuristic technology that's now available, I have an article from an Australian, Caitlin Johnston, who wrote about the new AI-infused robot guard dogs now being deployed by security forces more and more around the world, especially in China. They were sort of debuted around some of the FIFA football stadiums recently during the World Cup games. And the big thing about this is in her article, she also talks about this American company called Flock that makes and sells next-gen security systems like special cameras on the highways of the world to read by vehicle license plates as cars drive by, and facial recognition software is becoming all the rage in authoritarian countries like China, Britain, and the United States. And yes, I said Britain and the United States. Outside of obvious countries like Russia, China, and North Korea, these are the two most publicly surveilled countries with the EU coming in right behind them. Big Brother is watching everything you do in the majority of the developed world as soon as you step outside of your domicile, whether it's an apartment, house, or even if you're just living in a yurt. And they want to keep ramping this up, which is why governments are increasingly contracting all this data mining out to private corporations that need more and more data centers to store all this personal and private data on all the citizens they want to control. The UK and the EU are worse than the United States as far as the sheer volume of cameras across their public sectors, but under Trump, the US is catching up quickly, but not without some pushback from the citizens. There have been some news reports of people in the US destroying some of these flock roadside cameras lately and being arrested. I wonder how many roadside and other public-facing cameras are going down without making it into the news. As more and more angry people start looking for something to break in their need to do something to fight against the authoritarian government, I wonder how much longer it will be before we see outright mass destruction of a lot of this surveillance equipment around the country. Then you add into all that mix the upsurge in protest against building all these huge data centers in small towns across America. You know, the citizens are winning a lot of these battles, and I applaud them all. Some of these battles were right here in my neighborhood in Central Virginia lately, right in my county, as a matter of fact. There's plenty of other, less intrusive places that they could build these things in, but it would cost them a lot extra to set up their own electric grid and cooling systems, and they don't want to do that. It's cheaper to steal everyone else's electricity and water. We're talking about the water usage, the electric draw, not to mention the noise and fossil fuel pollution that they give out everywhere they get built. Whenever they're allowed to hook up to the local electric grid, the wattage they draw is so huge, the grid can barely keep up with it in a lot of places. Not to mention all the cooling water that's not being recycled back into the local systems, so ordinary people can have water for their everyday use. My last article for today is from the Sentinel Intelligence by Miss Jessica Wildfire. She writes about how Google wants to build a mega data center over where she lives in a very rural area at the southeastern foot of the Appalachian Mountains in the U.S. If they're allowed to build it, which she says her local politicians are all for, Google will likely suck up what is left of the river water where she lives, leaving everyone else high and dry. Not to mention the aforementioned pollution that's sure to come with it. We all know why the local politicians are for it. Google's paying them off. This is the new business model everywhere in the U.S. now and in Europe. What's worse is that nearly all of these politicians, whether it's just some local town council all the way up to the governor's mansion, are only too happy to take that money and look the other way when it comes to taking care of their constituents. Living in a mansion and driving around in a very expensive car is way more important than clean air and water anymore to those in charge. I mean, they get all they want because they're rich. And that is a sad commentary on the state of things in the West, that elected politicians are more concerned with their personal wealth and comforts than doing the jobs that their people elected them to do. Most of these politicians were already wealthy before becoming politicians anyway. In this day and age, you have to be in order to pay for an election campaign of any size, whether you're just running for mayor, a town council seat, or something loftier. You even have to be of some means to run for a local school board seat anymore. Not that the U.S. has much of a public education system anymore anyway, after Trump has eliminated the Department of Education in all but name now. The states are having to go it alone to educate the kids in their states anymore, with mixed results, depending on how wealthy the state is, without federal funding. Add to all this misery, there's no financial reporting that China is catching up and even surpassing the United States in cheap AI technology now, which means that China could bankrupt the AI industry in a few short years. If that happens, the U.S. will enter another major recession like the one they had back in 2000 during the dot-com bubble burst, or the real estate bubble of 2008. Likely worse this time, as the tech corporations are the only thing holding up the U.S. economy right now. Nearly all the other major industries in the country left years ago to find cheaper places to build factories with cheaper labor and raw input and material costs. With the latest news this week from China about the new Kimi K3 AI model coming out that will vastly surpass anything the West has right now, using cheaper to make computer chips, massively lower electricity costs for their data centers in China, the crash is just over the immediate horizon. Once this company and others start distributing these Chinese-made AI programs as open source starting on July 27th, that will be the start of the economic crash in the West. Between Trump's war with Iran and China out inventing AI and giving it to the world for next to nothing in monetary compensation, the Americans are headed quickly for insolvency. One good thing about U.S. insolvency, once it's declared, we don't have to worry about too many more data centers being built, as no one will have any more money to build them in the U.S. anymore. But that doesn't help the people who have to try and survive another major recession depression that will likely bring down the current government and replace it with something else. In a positive light, there are more and more democratic socialists entering election cycles now. I'm all for that, as long as they use the Bernie Sanders or Ron Mamdani model. I'm not a fan of strict socialism. Some of us are old enough to remember how that worked out for the old USSR, and nor a lot of other people would go for anything like that. But this new model of governance seems to be working out fairly well in New York City right now. I'm watching things carefully to see if other candidates running on similar platforms can do as well as they are in New York. Time will tell. The downside of all this is that Trump is racing ahead at full speed to upset the next midterm elections. We all agree that he's sounding more and more desperate, and that worries a lot of people around the country, not just for the Democrats and left-leaning independents. I'm old enough to have lived through several recessions since the early 1970s. I was very young and a senior in high school in 1973 when the U.S. entered my first recession, which lasted nearly 2 years. I survived all the rest since, and I suspect I'll survive the next one too, as will most of the rest of us. But the question we have to ask ourselves after this next one is, what's it going to take to fix our government so we don't have to keep repeating our mistakes over and over again? You'd think we'd have figured it out by now. Apparently not. But the supposedly wealthiest country on earth, or so we used to be, thought we'd have learned how not to go into economic recessions over and over again by now. Of course, as anyone with half a brain knows by now, the biggest problem the United States has today is its president and his MAGA government, who can't manage their personal lives, much less trying to run one of the most complex and diverse countries on the planet efficiently. There is a major recession coming. There's no more doubt anymore. It's just a matter of a short time within the next year or so, and we'll be deep into it. The American stock market is going to suffer a major downward correction soon, so we'd better get prepared for huge layoffs in the tech industries across the board and all of its subsidiary industries. Will we see another 20% unemployment rate? Maybe. It will get very high until things reset themselves, which they will, but under new management, one way or another. And that's what worries me a little bit. I wonder what that might look like. I hope it looks like something along what Senator Sanders and Mayor Mamdani are laying out. But as we all know, it could just as easily head for the dark side. If we want to know what that looks like, look no further than Russia, China, Turkey, many other countries we try not to think about too much. As in, this couldn't possibly happen to us here in the U.S., unquote. But because what happened in those countries in years past could just as easily happen right here in the good old United States under the right conditions, and those conditions are being actively set up as I speak. And that's where I'll leave things today. We here in the U.S. keep telling ourselves that we would never let anything take away our democracy and Bill of Rights. But we were stupid enough to elect someone like Donald Trump to be president of the wealthiest country in the world twice. And we see what he's doing to it. That's a symptom of a fundamentally sick society. Who's to say the Americans won't do it all over again in a few more years with someone else who's just as corrupt or worse because they can't seem to stop repeating their historical failures? Seems to be a long pattern. Maybe it's time for a change for the better. The current model of government doesn't seem to be working anymore. So it's time for me to take my break. So listen to my little advert, and I'll be back in a minute or so to read a poem from a friend who was originally from the Middle East.
I want to take this time to tell you about my book and explain how you can get one to read. America, 2031. The experiment has failed. A theocratic coup has transformed the United States into an authoritarian state. White Christian nationalists control the government. Millions of non-white citizens have been forced into labor camps or driven into exile. The Constitution is void. The economy is collapsing. And the country that once promised freedom now hunts anyone who remembers what that word meant. Dr. James Naismith is a ghost in this new America. Pakistani American, Muslim, and on the run with a bounty on his head. James practices medicine illegally for the underground resistance and those on the run, treating fugitives, rebels, and anyone the regime has designated undesirable in this new country. His medical kit is contraband. His patients are criminals. His survival depends on staying invisible. But Dr. James isn't running to save himself. His two younger sisters have been incarcerated in a labor camp, and every mile he travels brings him closer to a choice: keep running or risk everything to escape with his sisters. In the mountains of upstate New York, an unexpected reunion changes everything. Deanna, a woman from his past, offers him more than shelter. She has connections, survival skills, and some military training. With her skills and knowledge, they escape across upper New England towards a safe haven through dangerous territory and the fractured nation, igniting a simmering romance along the way. Together they navigate a landscape of betrayal and surveillance, where allies can become enemies, and every decision has fatal consequences. The secret police are hunting them. The resistance network is fracturing, and the journey to safety may cost James more than his freedom. It may cost him the chance to save his sisters. A powerful vision of democracy's collapse and one man's fight for family, faith, and a future worth living. So that's a synopsis of the story, and you can get a copy through the many options I have available in the online store on my website at crondabeha.com. You can see a picture of that here on your screen. I sell copies directly using an online shopping cart system, or I have links available to several online retailers such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Ingram Spark if you want print to order. There's also many other ebook distributors out there across the world where this is sold as well. So go find yourself a copy and order one today. Feel free to reach out and tell me what you think.
All right, welcome back. I'm going to read this poem here for you. This is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Fáilte. I hope I pronounced her name right. And it's entitled No More I Know. All around me, time has become timeless, silent time. Clocks which sang are no more. Rapture of gilded trees, no more. Songbirds sprinkling rainbows, no more. All around me, no more, no more. Under a Prussian blue bowl, a sky too benevolent for blind human eyes. Stars streak and whisper, riding rhythms of eternity, but nothing is forever. I know, I know. Life rang to songs of ordinary things. Then they cast off ordinary like leprous rags. The shame of being ordinary. I have traveled to the land of being ordinary alone. Can fears like claws of dark ivy and gritty thirst be called companions? If so, they were in poor company, and the demagoguery of hope. Come to me, you wretched of the world, hope, the realm of false prophets and the vice of rosaries caked with blood of ordinary martyrs. I despise hope. The poet must die thousands of times into the world of last breaths, of murdered babies, far aways, swallow screams of virgins disemboweled just because they could be, taste sweat of men raped by dogs, consecrate last breaths of holy giants, or mountains white men wants to conquer too many last breaths to count. A poet must swan dive into forbidden swamps, suck saps from necromancer roots, drown in plangent notes of rust and rot. That is true sustenance for a poet. It is the age of sulfur, a time of surrender, timeless time, motionless time of sulfur and surrender. Clocks that sang are no more. So that is quite a dramatic poem. It really got my attention. If you can tell by her name, she's of Middle Eastern ancestry. And so there's a big middle section of that I'm sure points right to Gaza. And so it's a very, very apt poem for the time. All right, so that's all I've got for you today. I want to appreciate everybody coming. Gora Mahagat. Thank you for watching or listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll return again to listen to offer a voice to a whole lot of people are thinking these days. As I say goodbye this week, I will leave you this quote from Stephen Hawking. Our future is a race between the growing power of our technology and the wisdom with which we use it. Wisdom must win. Slán go foill.